What about the damage?
They're the ones who locked us in. This thing has got to work.
All right, everybody, we are here with Robert Gittings, who is currently in London, England. And I'll let him introduce himself. He has recently worked for Milk VFX, and I'll kind of let him introduce him. Actually, let me just let him introduce himself instead of rambling.
Hi, Mark. Just want to say, firstly, thanks for having me on. I actually really enjoy your show. I've actually been following your show for quite a long time. Looking at your tutorials and stuff, it has helped me a lot during my studies, which is really great. My name's Robert. I'm a compositor / paint and roto artist at the moment. My previous job was at Milk Visual Effects, where I got to work on a couple of great shows on Netflix.
Just for everyone aware, we did have an interview, and then it crashed, and then we're like, you know what, let's redo it. And so you might hear us talk about things as if we already had this interview, and we did. Having some technical difficulties on my end. So anyway, but I'll just kind of go through your history here as we kind of move through it. We have a couple questions, not many, from people. And then what's really great is Robert has provided not only his current reel, which concentrates a lot on roto and cleanup and so forth, with great shows like Mandalorian. But he also has his graduate reel, so if you kind of get an idea what your reel and the quality of your reel should be to be picked up really quick right after college, you can definitely get a bird's eye view from this video. So first off, you started out, as far as your education, did you get, you actually have a master's. We talked about this last time. So did you want to talk a little about your history at university?
Sure. So, for me, when I left high school, I was only about 16 years old. And during that time, I really didn't know what direction I wanted to go in. So working in film or TV wasn't really a kind of a career path I was initially looking for. I ended up working in warehouses, driving forklift trucks, and working for retail and all kinds of jobs. I even joined the Army Reserves for about 3 years. It wasn't until I turned about 20 when I realised that I want to go back into education. So that's when I decided that I need to kind of better myself in order to maybe find a job that I might be more happy with. I decided to go back into education, where I retook some of the qualifications that I didn't do so well in high school. And I also decided that maybe I needed background in IT, which might really help strengthen kind of my general knowledge of computing. So I already worked with computers as a hobby from childhood, but I had no credentials to kind of prove that I knew what I was doing. So that's when I decided to do IT as kind of as another course. And it was through learning about computers, networking, web design, graphics, word processing, all the kind of different things you kind of find in general IT. That's when I realized that this is kind of the career path that I started to go down towards. It wasn't until I finished my IT course and that I decided maybe being more creative was a kind of a thing that I used to enjoy when I was a kid. I'd like to turn that into maybe a career. And I had a tutor called Neil Robinson from Walsall College, who inspired me to maybe pursue education at university, which is when I decided to go to Stafford University and study digital film and post-production, which has a little bit of visual effects in it, but it also focuses on filmmaking, writing. It kind of focuses on every aspect of making short films or television shows, all the way from pre-production to post-production. One of the main aspects that I really enjoyed in that was editing and visual effects, where I learned to use a bit of Avid and Premiere Pro. After studying those and doing a little bit of 3D modeling and a little bit of compositing in After Effects and Nuke, that's kind of where I realized that maybe compositing is where I really want to focus my career on. I used to make a lot of short videos when I was a kid with my friends back in school. I used to watch a lot of videos on YouTube, like the video co-pilot kind of tutorials and things that kind of which kind of inspired me to want to create little videos like that, little visual effects videos. And from kind of that hobby is why I decided maybe a career in film or visual effects could be beneficial for me, because I enjoyed doing it. And for me, if I enjoy what I do, it's not really much of it doesn't really feel like a job anymore. It just feels like I'm pursuing a passion, and it doesn't feel like work anymore. So that's kind of how I got into the field of visual effects. Really, I went to university, did a general film, a digital film and post-production course, which focused on everything. But it wasn't until I went to National Film and Television School where I really got to specialise in visual effects. But through those three specialities, colour grading, CG and compositing, we have to kind of pick one towards the end of the year where we want to focus on.
Is getting into the National Film and Television School, is that a tough school to get into?
For me personally, I don't know. I know when I had my interview there, it was in a kind of like a boardroom with about 3 people, just to talk about why I'm interested in the course and what I like about visual effects and why is this a career I want to pursue. And I think during my interview, I just showed a lot of passion. They looked at like some of the stuff I'd done as a hobby. They looked at some of the things I'd done at university. Some of it wasn't visual effects based. They just saw that I had an interest in it, and they saw that I had some elements of it that I used to do at my university course. But I think through the interview, they realised that this guy enjoys what he does. Let's help him out and see if let's get him on that course and help his career. And that's kind of how it happened for me. It's a great film school. Apparently it's one of the best ones in the world, from what I've been told. I know we recently won a BAFTA for outstanding contribution to cinema, which was insane. And a lot of people in the film industry have come from my film school, which is really cool.
It's so hard. I don't know how anybody could really judge whether a film school is better than another film school. You know what I mean? I mean, that's so subjective.
One thing I liked about NFTS was that they support the students a hell of a lot. When I first applied for the course, like, I don't come from a wealthy background. My mother works in Greggs, and I was brought up by my mum on my own for a long time. My mum recently got married, and now I have a stepdad now. But I have no like savings or anything like that. So the only way I could study a course like a master's degree was through either getting some loans to help out, as well as maybe a scholarship if I'm lucky enough to apply for a scholarship. And the school itself actually does help with scholarships and sponsorships to help you afford to be able to do the courses that they do. And I was lucky enough to get a scholarship which enabled me to do that course. Through BAFTA. BAFTA actually gave me a scholarship, which was amazing. It was a huge kind of like, wow, this is my career's going to get a lot better with all the support I'm getting at the moment, which was great. And I met a lot of people in the industry that have kind of helped me along the way. One of my mentors, a guy called Hayden Jones, he was my mentor whilst I was studying at National Film and Television School. And at the time, he worked at DNEG, and he now works at ILM. And through him, he looked at my work and looked at ways I could kind of improve myself and ways I can make my shots look better and stuff. And through his guidance and through meeting other people in this industry, the school really has great connections, and it really helps you kind of establish kind of a foothold in the industry. At least it did for me anyway. It helped me get it helped me achieve the level of skills that I needed to get into the industry, as well as create a good reel that employers like to see. And I want to be able to do that without the support of that school, as well as all the guidance and mentorship that I was given.
Again, I am very jealous of you guys because you are located in VFX Central.
I moved to London because that's just where all the work is as well. A lot of the effects industry is in London, and some other areas within the UK as well. But a majority of the main hub is in London.
So you started out doing some motion graphics work, and then was it through your mentor that you walked into Double Negative full time? Or?
It was through my mentor and through my course itself, actually. During the first year of our course, towards the end of the first year, we were given an option to look for work experience. That's kind of how I happened to get a kind of a summer job at DNEG. Because I already established a few connections there by talking to my mentor. I went to DNEG a few times before I even had a job there, just to show my mentor my reel and discuss like how to make things better and stuff. And it was through that connection that I was offered a nice summer job there, and a lot of my other classmates as well. They got themselves some positions at all different kinds of companies like Framestore, and it's just a great way to kind of get industry experience. And then when you come back after the summer and you start your second year, you've kind of got an idea of what the industry are looking for, and you've had a bit of that experience behind you. And I think that's one of the benefits of the course that I did, was just to get that extra industry experience to go in and give you an idea of where you might end up.
Is DNEG like basically the Foxconn of VFX in the sense of scope and scale? Obviously not by the way they treat their employees, obviously, but I'm saying like from what I hear, you guys have thousands of workers, or like is it like 1,000 workers? Is that too crazy, or are we talking?
DNEG is a very big company. I know they've got multiple houses within different countries. I think they've got a place in Mumbai. I know they've got one in London.
If you were to summarize your experience walking into that place in 2 words, or 1 or 2 words, what would you say?
For me, it was just kind of mind-blowing. Just to see visual effects being done at that kind of level, like seeing all the cool posters and everything. For me, it was like paradise. I was like, oh my god, this is cool. Seeing all the different posters of films and seeing all the people working at the desks and stuff. I was in heaven there. I really enjoyed working at DNEG. It was a good company to work for.
And that's where you met I'm gonna hopefully not pronounce his name wrong. Mihai Stan.
Oh yeah, that's where I've met Mihai. He's a nice guy.
Love to have him on again. I know he's probably listening, but this is he's I think he's still at DNEG, right? I think he's still over there. I'm pretty sure he might have moved around. You guys move around so much. I look at the history of the people we interviewed. I'm like, they're over there now. Over to BlueBolt. Over to it's just like
a lot of the industry is moving quite rapidly these days. A lot of the work is contract based, so you all move from one show to another. And if it's great when a company has multiple shows, you can bounce from one show to the other show within the same company, but that's not always the case. So you go where the work is, really. That's kind of why I've worked at so many different companies already. I've worked in the industry about almost 3 years now, and I've bounced from one company to another. Just that's kind of where the work has taken me at the moment. But the first company I worked at was DNEG, and then after that I left DNEG and worked at ILM for a little bit as a paint and roto artist. It's strange because when I first started the industry, I went in to DNEG as a junior compositor, where I was given the opportunity to do both paint and roto and compositing kind of simultaneously whilst I was there. Then when I left DNEG, I went into ILM, and that's where I gained a lot of the paint and roto experience. And through DNEG, I went to BlueBolt for a period of time as a junior compositor there, and then after BlueBolt, I went into Milk, where I became a Paint and Roto Artist again, and I enjoyed both aspects of that area of 2D. Paint and Roto and compositing are both areas that I actually enjoy quite a lot, and they're both similar, but they're a little bit different in many aspects.
I kind of equate Paint and Roto as being the job that people prefer over compositing or being a full comper in the respects of an animator, because an animator has to be very diligent, it's slow, meticulous process, and most of the people I teach at the college levels, they get one whiff of animation and the repetitive, not repetitive, but just very meticulous disciplines that are involved in it, and they're just like, the heck with this, I'm going to compositing and modeling, and it's like, but at the same time, I noticed there's also that reality of when you're a paint and roto artist, there's a part of you that's like, hey, I'm a paint and roto artist by trade, but I also am a compositor. I see that a lot with people. They don't want to be pegged into that, but that doesn't mean they can't enjoy doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Paint and roto is kind of like, it's kind of where a lot of people start with when it comes to 2D work. Sometimes you'll start off as a runner and then you'll work your way into Paint and Roto, and then from Paint and Roto you'll work your way into compositing. But Paint and Roto and compositing they're kind of very close to each other. You're doing the same, you're working on the same software, you're doing the same kind of techniques and stuff, whereas with Paint and Roto it's more about kind of fixing the shots. You're trying to make things look like nothing was done to them. Maybe it's improving green screens or blue screens, getting rid of markers or creases, or rotoscoping actors, separating them from the plate, things like that, removing rigs, removing puppets, removing wires, all that sort of stuff. So you're enabling the compositor to add things on top of that. You add all the visual effects, put in the backgrounds and things. So for me, with Paint and Roto and compositing, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Whereas each kind of area helps each other, and that's kind of why I enjoy doing both. Compositors will often do a bit of Paint and Roto as well. They won't just always be doing compositing. They'll sometimes have to do a little bit of Paint and Roto to get some of their shots done. But it's nice to have a dedicated Paint and Roto team in some of these companies, because it allows the compositor to throw more creativity at the shots.
So you have worked for Double Negative, working on Altered Carbon, which we're going to look at your reel in a bit, and then Hannah, Curfew, Doctor Who series. Did you want to discuss those a little bit?
So when I first joined DNEG, one of the first shows I worked on was Altered Carbon, and the first few shots that I was given were rotoscoping shots, and I was also given the chance to do a few compositing shots. This was during my summer internship. They wanted to give me the full kind of idea of what being a compositor is like. So I started with a bit of rotoscoping, then I did a bit of paint work, and then had a few compositing shots before I went back and finished my master's degree. It wasn't until after I finished my master's degree, which was in February 2018, I got employed again at DNEG, where I got to work on, I think, 4 different TV shows at once. So I worked on a show called Flack, a show called Hannah, which I believe will be soon on season 2. I worked on a show which came out recently called Curfew on Sky One, and I also got to work on Doctor Who, which is kind of like a dream come true for me, because I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. And it was kind of just some great projects to work on, especially at the beginning of my career. For me, working on Doctor Who was just one of those mind-blowing moments where I was like, oh my god, I'm living the dream there. But yeah, it was just some of the great shows I've worked on so far at DNEG. And then obviously when I went to Industrial Light and Magic, that's where I started doing a lot more Paint and Roto work. I worked on Mandalorian for a best part of about 8 or 9 months. I worked on a show called Krypton as well, which was on its 2nd series at the time. But yeah.
So yes, you get of course everyone does the jump. It's like establish yourself, and then it's like, okay, time to apply to the big shots, ILM, just to get your taste. Say, I did it. So you got Mandalorian, Krypton, and then BlueBolt, where you worked on Hannah,
Yeah.
Cobra, and
I was only there for a short time, but I got to work on Cobra and Series 2 of Hannah. It was mostly compositing work. So I did a little bit of CG comp, a little bit of weapons kind of added. I also did a lot of screen replacements, a lot of kind of bread and butter sort of compositing sort of stuff, which is all the same sort of stuff I used to do with DNEG as well, as a lot of screen replacements and adding matte paintings in the backgrounds and things. I know some of the shots that I worked on Doctor Who were green screen shots where I had to like replace what was behind the actor and see. I know on Auto Carbon I got to do a lot of like adding neon signs and I added a few elements, muzzle flashes and things like that on Auto Carbon and Curfew. But yeah.
Come March, the whole world shuts down for 4 months with COVID.
Yeah, so around about March, that's kind of when COVID kind of happened. So a lot of us started working from home. And it was kind of like an easy transition. We kind of went home in stages. Eventually, we were all working from home, especially when the lockdowns become a lot more serious. And for the last few months, up until around about May, I was working at Milk from home. And then we've wrapped pretty much on the 2 shows that I was working on. And then that's kind of it for me at Milk. I'm hoping to find a new job soon.
I'm wondering, since production, physical filming of the shows took a 4-month hiccup or pause, is that going to affect the VFX pipeline further down the chain when they start up production? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering what the delay is going to be for everybody. And from what I've heard from many people that, in production, either they just said, hey, you're either going to get your film done or not, and we're going to work from home, and too bad if you're worried about security. Or they just, they still call people into the post houses regardless, and they did their best with social distancing at the studios themselves. But it's going to be interesting because, like I was telling you earlier, we're in the States here, and we had 3 states open up finally, and the numbers are just skyrocketing in those 3 states that have been open for about a month now. So they're finally getting the numbers in. Here in Chicago, the numbers are really, we're going down, thankfully. But the question is, when we open up, we're actually opening up what's called Stage 4 here on Friday, which is tomorrow, which is going to be June 26th. And the question is, what then? Do we end up like the other states, like California, Arizona, and Florida, where they're getting 5,000 cases a day, and then what next? Yeah. So yeah, it's they claim, some are saying, oh, it's the second wave, and some scientists are saying, no, this is we're still on the first wave. And it's just like the wave ain't stopping.
There is no second wave. There is no second wave if you just keep the first wave going. I'm talking quite a lot. I need to know what's going to happen, because obviously coronavirus has only affected the film industry. It's caused a lot of productions to be halted and stuff, and it will affect post-production as well. It'll trickle down. It'll cause shows to get delayed. It'll cause shots to take longer to get to the companies, for us to start working on them and stuff. So yeah, it's affecting the film and television industry massively at the moment, unfortunately. That's why I'm starting to see a lot of people lose work, lose jobs. A lot of people are being made redundant at the moment, which is a shame. I know in the UK at the moment, they're starting to ease the social distancing rules. I think it used to be 2 meters. They're now saying it's going to be like 1 meter. I think we still have to wear masks in public, especially on public transport.
As of right now, you're just kind of chilling out, like most visual effects artists in London, waiting for the return. And I'm sure I'm curious, like, how that's all going to play out, you know, because you got a lot of artists like, I'm ready to work, you know, and it's
There'll
like,
be jobs coming eventually. It's just we have to be patient. But hopefully things will turn around. At the moment, I've been like updating my I updated my reel. I've updated my CV. I'm ready to get back into work again. It's just waiting for the opportunity for to see what's out there and see if anyone comes back to me. We'll see.
Let's jump into your first off. Here is your website, and this is VFXforFilmmakers.com. And we're going to go over your show reels and so forth that you just updated, which are really cool because we're allowing to kind of get into more detail on the understanding of what work you would do in such things as Roto and Paint as opposed to the big flashy shots, which don't really give you a roadmap as far as what, because there's such complexity and so many different layers, you don't really get into those details. But with something as Roto, it's not that it's simpler, but you can kind of nail out what you did in that shot specifically, and also the relationship between the Roto and Paint and the cleanup, and then eventually it moving over to the compositor who basically owns the shot and finishes the shot, so to speak. So definitely check out his website. And again, we got 2 reels here, and then we got questions. The first reel we're going to go over is your latest update reel, Paint and Roto VFX. And then we'll get into.
So it's kind of a mix between comp and Paint and Roto. There's bits of everything on there. It's everything I've done for the last 2 years, really, 3 years. So
we kind of went over a little bit on some of these shots, but I think we'll just kind of reiterate what exactly. This was shot on the day on a real location. This wasn't a green screen shot.
Yeah, that was a real location. Yeah.
And then you were
for this shot in particular, I added the suns in the background, rotoscoped the pillars, parts of the actors. Did a little bit of a luma key on the sky as well to kind of help me out with that. And I just put in the 3 suns in the background to kind of make it look like it's working with the cinematography in a way. And then added some lens flares, and that was job done with that shot.
I think it's there we go. Someone finally told me how you can do frame by frame inside of Vimeo to shift arrow keys. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. And then, of course, was this specific scene shot with an anamorphic lens, and you, of course, had to just come in and put in anamorphic lenses yourself?
Yeah, this was shot anamorphic. I think it was the first time when Doctor Who decided to do that. They kind of, when it went from series 10 to 11, they kind of changed things. Everything kind of, the look and style and the crew and everything kind of all changed direction, and they shot an anamorphic. The visual effects were they were aiming for a different kind of level of quality they wanted to work with. It was a fun show to work on. Again, it was a dream come true to work on this show.
So you did compositing, ground, DMP behind actor. Can you describe what DMP stands for?
So digital matte painting. So an artist, basically a DMP artist, would make the element for the ground. So there's a clean plate for the ground that was created, which had no crew or anything like that. And it kind of had parts of the original location kind of put in, and at least the original shot was I think it was a blue screen or a green screen. I can't remember which one it was now. It was only a small section of this shot because it's quite a big outdoor shot. There's only a small section where the green screen was, and that was in the middle of the shot where the actors climbing the tower, and the rest of that shot had crew in the background, like safety people and everything. So all that had to go, and the background was put in, which is the DMP. And then I added effects on top of that, like a bit of kind of a foggy effect, a bit of snow effects, because the shot itself it was raining on the day, so I wanted to kind of replicate kind of a bit of a mist and things like that. My supervisor was happy that I added those kind of elements on top of that. I had to extend the bottom of the crane itself because you can kind of see where there's a big bright light in the middle of the the shot. That was all kind of painted over just to kind of hide where at the bottom of the ground is, where the ground and the crane actually meet. And I extended that crane so it feels like it's going even further behind him. But yeah, it was a nice shot. It was one of the first green screen shots I was given, and it was nice to do a bit of that. So that shot, the next shot is that's a TP that I composited on top of the sand. This was quite a tricky shot actually, because it was really hard to track. Because there wasn't a lot of detail on the ground to actually track from. So what I had to do in the end was kind of divide the shot into two halves. So I tracked as far as I could successfully over the first half of the shot, and then I tracked again for the second half of that shot and kind of combined the tracks together. So I managed to get a nice smooth track for the entire shot.
Is that using Nuke or using some other third-party tracking software?
That was just using Nuke. I tried a bit of planar tracking with Mocha, which helps to some extent, but there wasn't a lot of detail to kind of pull from this shot, especially on the sand.
Because you're trying to create a 3D solve, not really a 2D solve or nothing. This isn't like a still image, right? This is just a three-dimensional object, or is it 2D planar that you're putting a 2D?
Yeah, it's a 2D kind of planar. It's supposed to look like it's 3D, but it's a 2D image that I composited in the background, and also matching the color and the lighting and everything else like that.
Yeah, I should have figured that in my own estimate, because I'm like, wait a minute, you're not a match move department. You're not doing 3D renders.
It's good to have a bit of background in that. It certainly helps to understand kind of how to do a bit of tracking, whether it's in Mocha, whether it's in Nuke. I used a bit of PF track when I was at film school, so I learned how to do a lot of 3D tracking in that. I can do 3D tracking in Nuke as well, so it's kind of where I started to begin with. But this was quite a tricky shot. It was quite hard to do a 3D track on because there just wasn't a lot of information there. And at the time, we didn't have a match move artist assigned to this shot, so I tracked it myself as best as I could.
And then you're using spline-based roto work in Nuke to deal with the hair for the foreground?
A bit of kind of open spines on the hair.
Open spines, that's right.
A bit of B splines around the hair and parts of the clothes, just for the left side actor. That was it really for that shot. The actual shot itself was much longer, but in my reel I've shortened it quite a bit. And again, this is the same sort of situation. I composited the tent on top of the hill. So there's a lot of these shots with the tents in, because it's kind of like a sequence that I was put on at the time.
So you were saying that these little cars out here are actual 3D models that you got with diffuse textures, emissive textures, and you brought them in and mapped them inside of scanline render inside of Nuke, and because they were so small and out of focus, you can just throw in a bunch of cars and kind of render them into the shot.
Yeah, it's just some basic elements that were done in 3D, and it was just a continuous animation of cars going crisscross each other. And I dropped that element in to a bunch of these shots and put them in the background. Added a defocus that matches. A lot of the compositing on the shot, these shots were adding like neon lights to the city, adding in some extra lights to the buildings themselves. Obviously that was one of the first shows I worked on. So I started off with rotoscoping and then did a bit of paint work, and then I was given some compositing shots, which is great. And that's where I got to play around with compositing these bits of CG in there.
So you're actually examining the bokeh on the reel on the day, and then you're using that as an example for a kernel that you can plug in for the defocus of the little cars?
Yeah, I mean, I know there are multiple ways you can create defocus in Nuke. You can actually create the shape of the bokeh yourself using just a simple square element and then drawing that drawing the shape of the bokeh with Roto, and you can do it that way and plug that into the defocus and get your as accurate as possible for your defocus for those shots to match the actual lens. But sometimes, again, like when we were talking about earlier about the defocusing of matching the defocus to certain shots, some shows already have those elements provided for you, and you can quickly grab the right tool, the right defocus for those actual shows and for those shots.
So they have like a library at DNEG that's like, this was the bokeh. Here's a 256 by 256 bokeh of some footage we shot of the lens on the day for, say, altered carbon or something. Is that something that they would do, or is it just, good luck, just try to find some bokeh and extract from that your own shapes, So this is sorry, somebody wrote a comment like I think it was like last interview, and they're like, just shut up and let your guest talk, and I'm like, I'm
right.
Sorry if I'm being really like inquisitive. I'm just trying to, it's not necessarily like, it's a combination of what I think I like to learn, but also what the audience would like to learn too. So that's why I kind of like interrogate my guests in this part.
That's okay.
So,
sometimes it's hard to kind of remember exactly what went into some of these shots, because it was such a while ago when you worked on them. It's like, okay, what did I do? How did I accomplish this? And you have to kind of think back as best as you can on how you actually did that. For me, I try to write down everything that I did. I've got a few notebooks where I've got just lists of shots and what I did on them and stuff.
When I was doing compositing for the Sam Jackson commercials, I had notebook after notebook after notebook after notebook after notebook filled, because I was also learning, but I was also at the same time like taking notes on the shots from the art director.
It's good to have what's the word? Pyrotechnics. Sometimes it's great to have it in the shot itself, or real fire sometimes in the shot itself, because if you can use those real elements as a reference, you can make it look realistic with what you composite into the shot as well, because you've got something then to look at, to compare it to. So I find that really helps sometimes to help a compositor make a convincing shot look good, by having something there that was originally shot as a reference.
So you, obviously this show Curfew is everybody's windows are boarded up, and you had to like put the boards on there, right? Yeah.
So this show, because it's at a certain time, everyone has to stay indoors because there's these creatures going around killing people. Kind of like zombies almost. Kind of like a combination of a zombie werewolf sort of thing. They're not really dead, they're just running around eating and infecting people. So obviously at night time, they have to roll the shutters on the first few stories of buildings just to keep everyone safe. So a lot of the shots on this show that I was given were putting the shutters on windows and stuff, kind of similar to screen replacements, and that's kind of general compositing sort of stuff, where you're putting footage onto a screen or onto a mobile phone or something. It's kind of same techniques, except some of this was also done in 3D. Some of the shutters are actually CG. Some of them are not CG and just 2D elements that are composited in. A lot of the shots for these were match moved, and we were given the camera and information for that, and then we would composite the element into the shot, and composite the shutters into the shot, and then bring back all the lens distortion and everything like that.
Okay, so this is actually 3D elements inside of Scanline Render through a camera that came from your match move department, and because these...
No, not all the shots. Not all the shots. Some of the shots are just 2D elements, and some of the shots that were given for shutters were 3D. It really depended on the shot. I don't think any of these ones were CG ones. I think most of these were 2D elements that we composited in.
So if something goes off the frame, like right here where you're going to be adding the shutters, what technique do you do? Just offset 2D tracking or planar tracking somewhere in the vicinity out here to extend the planar tracking you did out here?
For these shots, a lot of it was using cards, 2D cards and stuff. Because we had the shot undistorted as well, it was a case of just putting the distortion back over the top. Obviously, you can also use 2D plane. You can use what's it called, a corner pinning as well, which can really help with compositing like screens and things like that. But for those particular shots, it was kind of a mismatch of different techniques depending on what the shot needs, really.
You're putting again a series of like, you know, boarded bunch of shutter boards here, and then you have to match up with the flare that's occurring in this shot. Like interactive lighting, so to speak, but it's really just a foreground flare kind of flooding out the background boards that are on the windows.
I remember now, there's the ST maps that we use sometimes to undistort and redistort the plate.
Yeah.
But sometimes we just use general, like, undistorting the plate using grid analysis and things like that. Sometimes I'll track a shot myself and get an undistorted plate from that. Within Nuke, it depends on the shot, or it depends on what's available for us at the time. For this shot again, it's another more putting shutters on the windows and the doors. But obviously, I've also got lighting changes because the car lights are hitting the screen, so I've got to adjust for that as well. And you can do it manually, you can do it bit by bit, you can grade it over time, or you can use a curve tool, which will enable you to kind of analyze the changes of color in the pixels in certain areas of the image, and then you can apply those changes to a grade node and have it affect it over time using what it recorded from the analysis of the curve tool. There's lots of different ways you could do it. It just depends on the shot. Depends on what's best, really. The one thing about certain shots, especially when you're looking at a brand new shot they haven't started yet, is it's always good to look at a shot, analyze it, determine exactly what you need to do on that shot, figure out what's the best approach, what's the fastest approach as well, because you want to try and get these shots done as fast as possible, the highest quality as possible as well. But sometimes it's good to just sit back for a little bit and have a look at the shot, determine what needs to be done, and then go ahead and start doing it. I've had shots in the past where it might appear a little bit complicated and I can't figure out the best approach for that, and that's kind of where you can talk to another artist or a supervisor, get an idea of what their opinion on how they would possibly attempt it, and then that's kind of how you learn as well in the industry. Like you'll find those trickier shots that you just boggles your mind and you need another opinion on it. And that's one of the best ways of learning and teaching in the industry is through working on shots sometimes, because you can be given some really tough shots, and the only way to learn how to do it is by seeking that advice and training yourself and learning how to do things by talking to other people and talking to other artists and stuff. But generally, if you are struggling, talk to your supervisor or talk to another artist that you'll sit next to or something, because a lot of the time everyone's helpful and they'll share their knowledge.
What's animated shutters? What were those? And
so this shot had multiple shutters on the buildings and stuff. You can kind of see this is kind of around the time when the curfew is about to start, so some of the shutters are coming down.
So basically somebody ripped off a zombie movie mixed with what's that one political movie where everybody kills themselves or something? There's some movie where it's like they have a day of the year where everybody it's basically free for all. You can kill everybody.
I know what you mean. My mind's gone blank.
The something starts with an F or something. I don't remember what.
Purge.
Purge. That's
Purge?
yeah, not
That's
F.
it.
Purge. Yeah. It's like it's funny. It's
like, yeah. Except it's not people. Well, I suppose it kind of is sometimes people killing other people, but obviously there's a real emergency in this world of curfew because there's these creatures going around and killing people, so everyone has to be locked up. But yeah, I can see what you mean. Like they're kind of shutting up and trying to protect everyone. But the cool thing about curfew is it's kind of like a race. They're trying to race to get somewhere, sort of thing. So there are certain people that are breaking the rules of the curfew.
Yeah, when I heard curfew, I thought it sounds like the Purge. Remove wires on clothes. Was there any reason why she had wires on? Was she going to be pulled or something, or?
Yes. Yeah. So if you continue to play the shot, she gets pulled
there we
out
go.
through the barn door. So there was a wire on her and I believe the creature, and they just kind of pull them both back.
Oh, they
So
pulled both
again,
her
with this
and the
shot,
creature back, huh?
Yeah. So I had to rebuild parts of the clothes and parts of the background and the door and stuff. Basically make it look like there was no wires there to begin with, and that's kind of one of the main things with Paint and Roto is you just removing things that you don't want there. So this is a bit of screen replacements. So these screens were, obviously there was nothing on the screens to begin with, it was just a white image with some tracking markers on them. And to begin with, I removed all the markers on all the monitors, and because the screens were so brightly lit and white, they were quite good at keying. So I keyed the screens as best as I could, and then kind of put the footage into the alpha that I was able to get from those screens. So not a lot of roto was done on this shot, really. Majority of it was keying for that shot, just to put the actors over the front of them.
So being a white, very bright white screen, how do you find yourself fixing the edge matte for, say, the edge of this character here and getting that kind of white halo that was originally around him out?
I suppose it's just a bit of edge treatment, really. You can use the color of the actual image behind it to light the edges of the... you can use the element that you're using on their screens itself to actually light the edges of the actors or the elements in front of the screens. So yeah,
sort of like a spill luminance based way to isolate the color correction on his forehead. Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to do edge treatments and stuff. It really depends on what you're doing on a shot. Some people, you'll notice that they'll use like way too strong of soft edges and things, and it pulls you from the shot sometimes because it's not realistic kind of light bleeding and things. So sometimes the more subtle you can be, the better it'll look. I mean, blue screens and green screens in particular, that's kind of where you get a lot of spill and where you have to do a lot of edge treatment and stuff.
Any reason why they chose, I'm assuming they chose white for a reason as opposed to having that green or blue on the monitors? Or
I suppose you don't want to be lighting the actors with bright green and white. And just having blank monitors with some markers on them just seemed to be the best fit for that shot.
And having a good VFX supervisor on the scene, making sure there's enough contrast to pull a key. Safety harness and wires. It's common when you have a big movie star next to a cliff, they always put a wire on them for insurance purposes, I'm assuming.
You don't want to any fall off. A lot of this was creating the recreating parts of the camouflage pants that she's wearing. And it was maintaining that pattern as well. What she was actually wearing, like the harness wedge on her bottoms and the actual wires that are holding it, like I had to remove that, but also recreate parts of the way the jeans should look, like where some of the flaps are and the clothes are.
So where are the wires? Are they like right here and like maybe right here, or?
Yeah, they're attached to her clothes.
Okay.
It's hard to see on my screen at the moment because it's such a small thumbnail, but yeah, it was just attached to her just to stop her from falling off the edge of the cliff.
What are your favorite tools to use for wire removal in Nuke?
Favorite tools. I often find myself just going to the standard way of doing things. I create myself a nice clean part of the image and just track it on as best as I can. Smart Vectors is kind of one of my favorite tools recently because it's just really good at kind of picking up small movements of clothing and things like that. So I've been using that quite a lot, especially on cloth material, just to kind of keep that movement going. But sometimes that doesn't always work. You can have too much going on in the shot, and Smart Vectors just doesn't work that way. So some of the best methods I've used for like doing a bit of paint work is just going back to the standard standard tools, just tracking and doing a clean plate, creating a clean patch for it and just tracking that on as best as I possibly can. There are instances where you might be given a geo or using a card, for example, and you can create a clean plate and project that onto a card and have the paintwork be done through 3D instead, and all the tracking and stuff is kind of baked in there, and it just works with the camera movement, which is brilliant. And I tend to try and do that as much as I possibly can, because it does save a lot of time sometimes. You don't have to track, especially if you're given a camera to begin with. You don't have to do a lot of tracking. You just use the camera that you're given. But obviously sometimes you don't have that luxury and you'll have to track it yourself. It just depends on the shot, depends on what's been done already, depends if you've had a match move artist assigned to the shot or not. But the thing about obviously being a paint and roto artist and a compositor is when you're working in the industry, you won't always have the luxury of having everything given to you. You'll have to know how to do things yourself as well. You can't just rely on being given a camera. You need to know to be able to track something yourself and do working nuking within 3D and using cards and stuff. So all these techniques and tools that you learn in the industry, it's very vital. You might not always need them, but it's nice to have that knowledge in your arsenal.
So let's jump over to your grad reel, and I think because of time we won't unfortunately we won't pause it. We'll just kind of play it through. But this is a good idea once again for those of you like, why can't I get into the industry? Because your reel has to look like this, and this is what it'll get. This will jump you into DNEG if you're in the right place at the right time and you got the right attitude. So
sometimes for me this reel is one of my first reels, and it was way too long, to be honest, for the industry. It's best to have a nice shorter reel which is to the point and shows exactly what you want to, what the skills that you've learned and how you do things. Because I was a compositor during my studies, it's kind of a mishmash of all different things. It's got a bit of CG compositing, it's got a bit of animated creatures. There's a lot of blue screen and keying and all these core skills that a lot of employers like to see, that you know how to do, or at least you have an idea of how to do these things from a kind of junior level. A lot of set extensions, like this particular shot is a set extension with a bit of blue screen in and just extending the wall. So that was all done with 3D cards, just projecting more of the wall onto cards and stuff like that. So a lot of these, if you can demonstrate all these different techniques like rotoscoping, marker removal, maybe keying, wire removal, all those different kind of techniques and stuff, you can really show the industry like this is, you know how to do these things, so they don't have to train you from the get-go. A lot of this, some of the compositing work that I do is a lot of bread and butter sort of work, like screen replacements and stuff. I consider quite simple kind of composite stuff, but if you can do a really good screen replacement, have it look like it's originally there, that's compositing at the end of the day, and it shows that you know how to track. It also shows how you can key something into maybe a screen, or you can place something in and make it look like it was originally there.
Keep interrupting.
So my course is so the first 8-9 months are common tuition, so we'll have a tutor come in from the industry and teach us for a few months on different fields. So we'll learn a bit of color grading for a few months. We'll learn compositing. We'll learn some CG as well, and we'll have our own modules where we do some CG modeling. We'll do kind of like a little kind of a character or creature, which is that the little kind of a paper creature that we created. And they usually divide our class into two groups, and we'll have two different short pieces, two CG creatures that we create. But after the first 9 months of tuition, we go straight into our specializations, and that's where the second year comes in, and we start working on all the different grad films and the grad fictions and things like that. So there's multiple courses at the school. They've got documentary courses, they've got grad fiction, they've got television shows, they've got animation as well, they've got stop motion, they've got all different types of courses, and we'll help out as best as we can multiple different projects. Because our courses, because our class kind of one of the biggest ones in the school. I think my class was about 14 people to begin with. And the majority of the classes at the school are only 8 people, so you'll have 8 different films that are made, and you'll have 8 directors, you'll have 8 cinematographers that are learning. It's kind of how it works there, and they'll all work on different things, different films and different scripts and stuff. I've seen a lot of your tutorials, and they really did help me during film school. Some of the stuff about green screens and how to use defocus and how to use how to get good alphas and a lot of the principles of keying is really helped me during my film school.
There's one person you can thank for that, and that's Brad Moore. Brad, right. I believe, is now the head of I forgot. It's a big VFX house in Montreal or whatever. I can't remember the name of it. He was he was nice enough to teach me all this green screen stuff, and I'm like, I'm putting this online. I'm like, I never thought it would blow up to the amount of views it has now, but man, it's like. So questions we have is with Raju Pedinti. Hi Robert, how hard is it for roto artists to change into effects artists? I'm assuming he may mean compositing artists.
If he means compositing, then it's kind of, they're very close to each other, because you're kind of both doing the same, you're both working in the same tools and stuff. If he means like Houdini, and if he means that kind of effects sort of simulation sort of stuff, it's kind of a different field really. That's more towards CG side of things. So that'd be a huge. There's a big difference there, because it's kind of completely different software, different field really. So if that's what he means, if he means going into like Houdini and doing simulations and things like that, procedural sort of stuff, I don't think going from Roto to that is really the same. It's completely different.
I usually use the example when I worked at NetherRealm Studios. I started out as a cinematic intern in the cinematics department, and then came a moment where they hired me on full time after proving myself, and they said, "Okay, where do you want to go? We've got a character team, we have an environment team, we still have the cinema department. Where do you want to go?" And I went to the character team, where I became a character technical artist, because that's what I had a passion for, and I was really good at. So jumping from, roto artist to effects artist is sort of like saying I'm going to be a hairdresser. It's, I mean, it's maybe too extreme, but I mean, it's like if you're in the door just to get in the door, and you just happen to have a roto artist job, and you're like, I want to get out of this, for crying out loud, I want to be an effects artist, and so be it. But that's a decision you'll have to audibly mention to somebody. You know what I mean?
I mean, if he does mean compositing, it's kind of straightforward. A lot of compositors tend to start off in Paint and Roto. They'll do a lot of Paint and Roto for a few years and develop the skills and the techniques. They'll start getting shots to do a little bit of compositing sometimes. Then you gradually work into a compositing role. It depends on your entry into the industry, really. There are multiple ways you can get your foot in the door in a lot of these companies. Some people will go, because even though I did a degree, I also did a master's degree, and through that I was able to get straight into a 2D position at a compositor stage. But I was hired as a junior compositor at DNEG, and then I went and did some Paint and Roto as well after that. But there are other routes to take as well. You don't necessarily have to do a master's degree to go into this field. You can also do your regular undergrad degree, maybe get into the industry at a runner, start your way up from a runner, work your way from that into a Paint and Roto position, and then go from Paint and Roto into compositing. It's all about the more experience you get, the more experience you get, and the more experience you get, and the better. I'm trying to think what I was going to say now. So the more experience you get, the better you'll become as an artist, and through that's kind of how your progression sort of happens. it really just depends on how you want to get into the industry, really. For me, I went straight into a junior compositing position, and then I went and did paint and roto as well. When I was at DNEG, I was doing paint and roto, and I was doing compositing. It was kind of a mishmash of both things. I suppose a lot of junior compositors do a lot of that anyway. They do a bit of both. Whereas as you kind of go from a junior compositor into a more of a mid-level compositor, you're probably given more CG sort of compositing sort of stuff to do. At least that's from what I've noticed in the industry. It really just depends on the shows you're working at and where you work and the companies that you work at, depending on how progression works and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of how it works for me. I'm assuming it's exactly the same for 3D artists as well. They'll maybe start off. I know you can start off as a technical runner. You can work your way into like. I know one of my friends started off as a data wrangler. He started off working in like managing the farms and stuff like that, getting all the information, recording all the information and passing it over to people, and then through that he became a CG artist as well. There's a lot of different ways to kind of get into the industry, and there's a lot of junior level positions that go from one to the other to become a senior in whatever specialty that you want to go into. Yeah, that's kind of how I've seen the industry, at least.
Let's see. We got Kashif Khasan says, "Hello, sir." And then we have Roxy. "Hi, sir. What are the fundamentals a beginner-level artist must concentrate on? And how much of experience a noob should gain to jump from paint artist to comp? And is it healthy to go from one department to another because the pay might be less than if we jump from a senior paint department to junior comp and leads to a new cycle?"
Okay. I know we previously talked about this. Actually, I remember there's a lot of some artists don't want to become compositors. Some artists want to stay in paint and roto, and they can do that. That is perfectly fine. A lot of people enjoy doing paint and roto, and they want to take that to a more senior level, and they want to do that for a lot of career. I've met a lot of paint and roto artists that enjoy doing that, and that is what they want to do for the rest of their career. And there are some paint and roto artists that want to go into compositing. That's a side that's kind of the position that I'm currently aiming for at the moment. But in terms of like the different levels in paint and roto and compositing, it really depends on kind of what really depends on you. Really, it depends on where you want to go into. You don't have to become a senior paint and roto artist to get into compositing. You can go from a junior to a mid-level paint and roto artist straight into a compositing role. It's all dependent on experience and building up that portfolio and building up your reel and everything like that. Building up trust as well within the companies that you work for. Sometimes you won't just run straight into those positions. You need to be able to prove yourself that you've got these skills. They can manage your time and get things done for deadlines and stuff like that. For a roto paint artist to going into compositing, it's, at least for me, I started off as a compositor and I actually went back and did paint and roto, and I found that great for me personally, because I even though I've done a lot of paint and roto during my studies, I hadn't actually worked. At the time I hadn't actually done that as a role before, and that's kind of where I really got a lot better at doing rotoscoping, trying to learn all these different techniques to kind of speed things up. We used corner pins and tracks and everything like that to kind of get roto done as fast as quickly as possible. I suppose over time you'll just develop these skills and get better, and that's kind of how you become going from a junior to a mid to a senior. It's all about experience, and it's all about how you've progressed through the industry. It's kind of the only way I can really describe it. Really, is just takes time and practice.
Okay. Well, with that said, I think we're coming to the end of a very long interview, but I think it was well worth it, and everybody got a lot of really good info. Thanks again, Robert, for coming on.
Right.
If you guys want to check out his links, I have his IMDB, his LinkedIn, also Milk VFX, if you're curious about possibly applying or whatever, checking out some of their work that they have done. Definitely check out milk-vfx.com. And also I have links to his graduate reel for reference, and also for his full reel. With that said, I hope for the best for you, sure. As soon as this crisis is over, I'm sure we'll all be back to normal. And with that said, thanks a bunch.
All you must be dog. All you must